Who do you need to forgive at work? Is it your manager, a colleague, or maybe even yourself? Have you ever thought about forgiveness at work? What if the one thing holding you back from reaching your full potential isn't the lack of skills or opportunity, but unresolved resentment you're holding on to? Yes, you're holding on to something that's blocking your future. So, what are you holding on that's blocking your future? Let's say you applied for a job years ago. You didn't get it. They dolled you around, for lack of a better word. They told you lies. You questioned your purpose. You questioned your potential, your ability to move forward. You sat in the horror and the disappointment of not getting the job you applied for. You sat there, you stewed, you brewed, you were angry. But rather than leaving the employer, you stayed. And every day since that moment, you've harbored deep, deep resentment and hatred for the system and maybe even the people and the process. And while you have sat in that seat, you've watched others come in the door, walk in, often less qualified than you are, not having the correct credentials, and you have watched them advance and move up. And you have been left sitting in that seat. And every day you have resented that moment. But rather than walking out the door, than fixing up your resume, than making an active effort to leave that horrible environment, you sit there, you harbor resentment, you harbor hatred for the system, and you show up for work every day. You cannot see your possible. You cannot see what's possible because you're still living in yesterday's pain and yesterday's unhappiness. Welcome to What's Your Possible, where we reskill women for tomorrow. We help you transition. We help you find your possible. We help you live your possible. My name is Margaret Spence, and today we're diving into a topic most of us avoid, but can no longer ignore: forgiveness at work. We never talk about what we need to forgive. And remember, I'm not saying forget, I am saying forgive. Let's be honest. Let's have an honest conversation. Workplace relationships are complex, they are toxic, they are problematic, they are hard to resolve, completely hard to resolve, right? They break your promises. They stab you in the back sometimes, right? Leaders break promises to you. Teams don't work the way they're supposed to work, and recognition is often overlooked. And somewhere along the way, trust erodes, leaving behind resentment and a lingering question that you should be asking yourself: how do I move forward from what happened to me in the past to see what's possible for me in the future? Here's the thing. Forgiveness is not about letting go. Not at all, right? It's not just about letting go. Forgiveness is more than letting go. It's about reclaiming your power, your energy, your purpose, your ability to thrive in the environment that is far from perfect. It's about recognizing that while you cannot change the past, you can change how you let it shape your future. This podcast dedicated to finding your possible. In today's episode, we're exploring forgiveness as both a personal and organizational responsibility. Forgiveness at work is not business as usual. It's a wake-up call to change yourself, to change your career, to adapt to the dynamics of the workplace, to redefine what's possible for you in spite of the experiences, right? Despite the experiences, and in spite of your experience, We have to find and redefine what's possible for us, not in spite of your experience, but because of your experience. Let me say that again. It's critical that we understand that what we hold on to that has happened to us in the past at work defines how we move into the future. Let me give you a simple example. Let's build on the example that I started with. You applied for a job 5 years ago. They didn't give you the job. They didn't really tell you why you didn't get the job. And you made one of two choices. They'll never hurt me like this again. I'll never let them see that I'm vulnerable. Two choices that we make. Those are the two choices that we make. I won't be vulnerable and they'll never hurt me again. And so every time someone has come to you and said, there's a position available that we think would be great for you, there's a position you should apply for, there's a role that fits you perfectly, that's hand in glove yours. You don't even need to apply. We're going to give it to you. And instead you say, I'm comfortable in this role. I don't want to take anything else. I don't want to apply for this. I like my current role. And so the organization gets to frame this as there are people here who just don't want leadership responsibilities. They just don't want to have a leadership responsibility. We've asked them a couple times, and they don't want a leadership responsibility. So rather than you saying, I'm still bruised and hurt from the last time you disappointed me, and I've decided that my wall is up and you'll never disappoint me again, we then say, I don't really want that promotion. But the big question is, what are you sitting on when you sit in that place? Let me say that again. What are you sitting on? You're sitting on the hatred, the resentment, the unhappiness. Don't want to be vulnerable to these human beings again because they've hurt you and they failed you the first time. And you don't want to show that vulnerability to them ever again. You don't want to give them the power to hurt you. But in essence, what you've done is put an absolute ceiling on your career. You've basically crawled into a can and they've put a lid on top of it based on the past experience that you've had with the organization. This is the reason why this topic, forgiveness at work, is monumental. For those of you in HR who are listening to this podcast episode about forgiveness at work, we think that we need to engage employees. We need to do this level of engagement. If the employee has put a wall up around them and they do not want to be vulnerable and they do not want you to hurt them again, and your leaders and managers don't know how to engage them, and they have hurt them in the past, no amount of pouring engagement things on top of this semi-disappointing workplace is going to make a difference. So let's grab the notebook and let's start a conversation to unlock your potential and unlock the forgiveness cycle that you need to unlock to move forward. I'd like to ask you to do me a huge favor. I would like to ask you to share your stories of forgiveness at work on social media. Tag us in your share under What's Your Possible and hashtag What's Your Possible and hashtag forgiveness at work. I want to hear things that you've had to forgive to move forward or things that you are holding on to that you really need to forgive in order to be a more focused person that unlocks their potential, right? Because that's really what we're talking about. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. My name is Margaret Spence. I'm the author of Leadership Self-Transformation, the 52 career-defining questions every high-achieving woman must answer. I'm a keynote speaker, founder of the Inclusion Learning Lab and the Employees to CEO Project, a mentorship program for women. And my work focuses on empowering women and organization leaders to break barriers. And I focus on embracing inclusivity and redefining what's possible in your workplaces, in your career, and in your life. So now that we've got that part out of the way, let's talk. What did your employer or leader do to erode your trust? What did they do to you that you need to forgive them for? And let me preface this by saying, again, we're not forgiving people for horrible behavior, but in essence, we are. We're not forgiving toxicity and staying in toxicity. So let me level set forgiveness. Okay. Forgiveness is us being able to no longer beat ourselves up about something that happened in the past so that we can move forward. So let me define what forgiveness means in this sense. Forgiveness is not you make me into a doormat and I just lay here and take it and let you trample all over me. That's not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is I'm going to let go of what you did to me so that I could see my future moving forward. So now that we've identified that specific definition, the question is, what did they do to you? Uh, That's the easy question. What did they do to you? Was it a lack of recognition? They didn't recognize you for the tireless efforts that you put into at work? Is it unfair treatment, bias, favoritism, inconsistent enforcement of policies, undermining you as a person in your team? Was it overwork without support, overburdening you with work and not giving you enough resources, and you're burnt out and you're burning out and you can't ask for what you need to be successful? Was it poor communication, lack of transparency from leaders, that lots of rumors and lots of lack of trust in the organization? Did they ignore your feedback when you said, hey, this is a possible thing that could happen? And they ignored it and it happened and then they blamed you for it. Did you figure out in that workforce that your voice doesn't matter? Did you have hostile interactions with your leaders, bullying, harassment, unprofessional behavior that just didn't get addressed by anyone? See, these are the violations that happen to us, that we play them over and over and over again in our head. These violations, especially when we encounter them again, or a different version of the dysfunction shows up again in our world, we replay the past over and over and over again. And we lose the ability to use our voice effectively, and we lose the ability to trust our gut that this is not the place for us to be. See, forgiveness becomes the first step towards repairing what is broken and repairing the past. You know, Yala Van Zandt wrote a great book about forgiveness, and she talked about all the ways that we can forgive, right? And I agree with all of what she said around forgiveness. We have to work through it. But when we are at work and it is dependent on us to show up every day to get a paycheck, and we are grappling with things that happened to us in the past, and we don't feel that we have the muscle to walk out the door, and we feel trapped because maybe we don't have the skill set to get another job, there's a level of forgiveness that has to occur so that you look at that employer differently. You look at that employer and you say, what is my possibilities here? And how do I move past what happened in the past to find my future here? Because rather than sitting there and feeling that you're stuck, right? Rather than sitting there and feeling that you have no options and no opportunity, forgiveness becomes the first step towards repairing what is broken or what they have broken in you, and finding a way forward so that you can build the life and career that you want. If you cannot forgive, let me say this again. If you cannot forgive, you can never see what's possible for you in that environment. Let me restate this. If you are holding on to the resentment, the anger, the hatred, all of that stuff from the past, of the things that they have done to you that were horrible. No one is saying what they did to you was right. I want you to hear me. If you cannot forgive, you will never see what's possible for you in the environment. And if you cannot forgive them for what they have done to you, you cannot succeed there. But here's a pin that I want to drop right now, right here, because I want you to really introspectively look at this. Someone has done something to you. Let's say you worked at XYZ company 5 years ago, and the manager treated you really badly. It was a toxic environment. They didn't do what was right by you. And you had the courage to put your resume together and you walked out the door, you got a new job. But that feeling that you had back at that job 5 years ago is still inside of you. It's still sitting there. It is waiting for a sign that that will happen again. Let me say that. Let me break this down a little bit. That issue that happened to you 5 years ago is sitting in your back of your mind. It's sitting there. And what it's doing is it's using your eyes to see. And it's saying every day, you know, Jane is treating me like Sally treated me 5 years ago on this job that I left. It's looking and picking up little things that match the pattern of what happened to you in the past, real or unreal. It's picking up those patterns. And the reason it's picking up those patterns is because we have never forgiven what happened to us in the past. And we've never stopped telling the story and adding to the story of what happened to us in the past. We tell the story with a lot of power. We say, I was at this job and this person did this horrible thing to me, and it taught me a lesson that I will never let anyone do that to me again. So rather than sitting in the new job with the new company, with the new place, rather than sitting there thinking, you know what, this is a new place, this is a new opportunity, this is a chance for me to do something new and something different, you sit there waiting for that occurrence to occur again. And when it does occur, inevitably, because organizations are human beings put together in unnatural spaces. That's what organizations are. Let me say that again. Organizations are human beings put together in unnatural circumstances. Would I normally be with this particular person? But work has caused me to be in an environment with them. And so conflict will occur in that environment. But if I am basing my future on the bar of, is this the same thing that happened to me 5 years ago? Is this the same duplication of what happened to me 5 years ago? In essence, what I'm doing is waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm not living in my possibility. I'm living in what could possibly happen that reminds me of my path so that I can validate why this employer is just as bad as the last one. You can't see what's possible for you there. If you didn't get a promotion at the prior job and they took a crap on you at the prior job and you come to this one and they're now really a good employer and trying to push you forward, do you say yes to them pushing you forward? Or do you say, I'm afraid to move forward because I was hurt the last time, I was vulnerable, and I allowed myself to be hurt because I put myself out there and I got hurt. I'm never going to let that happen to me again. So I'm still living in that incident that occurred 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, and I cannot move forward. This is the impact that forgiveness at work has on us. That's what it has on us. So let's talk about something many of us wrestle with, a refusal to forgive ourselves, which often stems from this strong sense of how we could have avoided this mistake. I shouldn't have applied for that job. Maybe I wasn't ready. And that's why they didn't give it to me. And that's why they hurt my feelings. And that's why I won't be vulnerable again. Yeah, we live in that. That means we not only can't forgive the organization, but we can't forgive ourselves for putting ourselves out there to be vulnerable and to be hurt. And so rather than taking charge of our career and making prudent decisions and making decisions based on current facts sitting in front of us, we make the decisions based on the prior hurt and the prior experience that we had before. We replay the slips and the errors. We obsess about what happened. We contrast it with what could have been. And had we not been so careless, so impulsive, or if we had not put ourselves out there, and then we beat ourselves up for not having used our voice when the bad situation came up. And because this is recurring inside of us and there's been no level of forgiveness, this pain continues. It becomes this recurring jab of pain that grips us. It is the painful present, the alternative reality that we imagined, and the past that we can't let go of. It's the what if. What if I had not done that? What if I had not let them do that to me? What if I hadn't sent an email to my boss yelling at them about something? Maybe that they wouldn't be holding that against me. Or maybe you regret applying for the job that you didn't get because you deep down don't think you deserved it. You don't think that you've earned the right to get it because someone told you in the past that you weren't ready and they didn't give you the space. Whatever it is, self-forgiveness becomes critical to moving forward and claiming your power. Self-forgiveness is the most critical thing that we can do as women. Now, let me talk to Black women. Forgiveness is not a crutch. It is a tool. Let me say that again. Forgiveness is not a crutch. It is a tool. For Black women in particular, the act of forgiveness can often be a repeated cycle. We forgive our husbands, our boyfriends, our family, our parents, our cousins, our aunts, our people who take a crap on us. We forgive and we forgive and we forgive without recognizing that forgiveness is not the bridge. It's the tool to build the bridge. If I can forgive you, I can build a different bridge in our relationship. If I cannot forgive you, there is no bridge to be built. And so you remove yourself from the situation completely. And when it comes to Black women at work, we know that especially when we have other women bosses who can be Black or white, there is a level of micromanaging, microaggression, micro that can occur for us. And so every day we live in this place of, I will forgive them to go in their office. I will forgive them to drive into the parking lot. I will forgive them because they just don't know what they do. And then we pull out the Bible of forgiveness. And we feel that forgiveness is what we need to do. And it becomes a crutch, not a tool. Right? It becomes our crutch. See, forgiveness can pave the way forward, but it cannot be the only structure holding up your journey. It cannot be the only structure holding up your journey, right? To my sisters, I'm talking to you. Listen to this part of this podcast. I want to encourage you to use forgiveness to reclaim your power. Use forgiveness to reclaim your power, but don't let it define the boundaries that you need to set for yourself and for others. Do not let forgiveness allow toxicity to take root in your present because it will affect your future. See, we cannot apologize when they are creating toxic environments for us. We can't make an excuse for what we're seeing right in front of us. We have to be willing to protect ourselves and walk out the door. That is my message for Black women. Right? Forgiveness is a two-way street. I can forgive if I see my possibility and my ability to move on. That's it, right? So let me talk about the 6 tenets of forgiveness at work and how they interplay with finding your possible. In order for us to have forgiveness at work, we have to acknowledge what has happened to us in the past. We cannot move forward without confronting what's holding you back. Forgiveness begins by naming the grievance that you need to address. Let me say that again. Acknowledging the past. You have to acknowledge the past to move forward. I didn't get the job 5 years ago, but that is not going to stop me from applying for a job. That's not going to stop me from evaluating whether this is a place I can see my future. I'm not going to let what happened to me in the past dictate how I respond to the future, right? See, we have to name the grievance that needs to be addressed. Empathy as a bridge is the second part of the steps to forgiveness. True growth happens when you step into someone else's shoes. Empathy dissolves blame and opens a door to understanding. You have to be empathetic to yourself and say, I deserve grace. I deserve grace personally. This employer is not the right place for me. This leader is not the right leader to lead me. This organization is not the right place to advance what's possible for me. I'm going to have grace on myself for making the decision to stay here as long as I have. I could tell you I was divorced and I stayed married for probably 20 years too long, right? And that's sad to say, but it's because I couldn't give myself grace to move on. And then when I did move on, I was regretting the fact that I had spent 20 years and not moved on. This is a moment of vulnerability. Empathy is a bridge to vulnerability. It's a bridge to forgiveness. We have to have grace on ourselves and empathy with ourselves in order to forgive those who have done things to us. The third step in the forgiveness process is releasing resentment. We have to let go of our anger and our frustration because it blocks opportunities, right? If we are still resentful and we are still angry and we are still hurt and we are still bruised and we are still having this wall that we don't want to show vulnerability and we don't want to get hurt and we don't want to put ourselves out there because we have fear of what could happen to us and we live in this anger and so on, that it holds back and blocks our opportunity. I've said often, especially for us Black women, we are always in the fight because every day we get up, we have to fight. We don't know anything other than fighting for our existence. But the reality is, if we have our palms open, if we are not fighting, we get to see our opportunity. If we release resentment, then it frees us up mentally and emotionally to pursue new goals, to look at the world differently. I no longer hold on to what defined me a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I look at what is going to come to my future tomorrow. The word for 2025 is possibilities. I will see my possibility despite what obstacles have been placed in front of me or what obstacles are being moved and reshuffled in front of me to stop my progress. We have to rebuild trust, but we have to trust ourselves first. Forgiveness requires that we repair the broken relationships with ourselves, which is critical to unlocking our future potential. When we are in a mode of unforgiveness, meaning we cannot forgive what the employer has done to us, because this is not forgiveness in your relationship. This is forgiveness at work, which is where you spend 80% of your time, right? When we cannot forgive at work, we cannot build trust. Forgiveness requires active steps to repair broken relationships, which is critical to unlocking future potential. We have to trust ourselves again. We have to trust that even if we're vulnerable and we get hurt, we made the right decision. We made the right decision for us. You made the right decision for you, right? We can't live in this past place and expect something different. The fifth part of the commitment to forgiveness means that we commit to change. Forgiveness isn't passive. It's a choice to approach things differently moving forward. We're going to make a choice. You may make adverse decisions about me that hurt me to the core, but I'm going to issue a level of forgiveness and I'm going to look through a different lens. The lens that I'm going to look through is this a place that I can grow? Can I see my future here? Can I see what's possible for me here? Despite all of what you've done to me, can I see my future today, tomorrow, the next day, 5 years from now? And if I cannot see that, I will forgive you for everything you've done. I will say that moment was teachable. I learned something about myself, my resiliency, my ability to be fortified. And I'm pulling out all the skills that this organization has taught me. And I'm going to put myself together and commit to change the location that I show up to work every day. So committing to change is the fifth principle of forgiveness at work. Remember, forgiveness is not passive. It's a choice to approach things differently moving forward. The sixth tenet is finding strength in vulnerability. Allowing yourself to forgive shows courage and resilience. It's a powerful way to reclaim your career and your purpose. Finding strength in vulnerability. I was vulnerable. I got hurt. I stayed too long. I forgive myself. I give myself grace. The fact that you didn't give me the role doesn't mean I play the story over and over in my head that I'm not good enough. Instead, I say, this organization did not fit me, but this organization gave me the following list of skills that I can take to another organization where I can show my vulnerability, and my vulnerability is a strength, and I can put myself out there for other roles, and I will get those roles. And even if I don't get them, I will not stop or block my progress because I am living in the past and I'm living where I can't forgive. So that is the sixth tenet of forgiveness. So I want you all to take a deep breath, and we're going to pause for one quick second because this is a lot. It's a lot. I'm calling out some deeper issues at work. Forgiveness at work is hard. So I want you in this moment to just breathe. Just take a deep breath and recognize that you deserve the grace of forgiveness. You deserve to forgive them in order for you to find your possibility. So as we take this pause, I want to just tell you a little bit about this episode. The episodes of What's Your Possible is brought to you by the Inclusion Learning Lab, where inclusivity drives employee engagement and empowers leaders to build thriving teams. Again, my name is Margaret Spence, your host, and I am the creator of the Possibility Framework, a transformative approach to empower women and organization leaders to unlock their full potential. The What's Your Possible podcast is my emotional give back to all of you. If you love this conversation, don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on YouTube. Our page on YouTube is What's Your Possible. The podcast is What's Your Possible on all of your podcast apps. Join us for our live broadcast on LinkedIn, where we dive deeper into building inclusive workplaces and redefining what's possible. So I want to ask you in this moment to share your stories of forgiveness at work on social media. Tag us with what's your possible, hashtag what's your possible, and hashtag forgiveness at work. Every week, we convert our podcast episodes into an article, and we have that article on LinkedIn, and it is also on the blog on our website, inclusionlearninglab.com. So follow our LinkedIn newsletter. It's called Possibilities and Pathways on LinkedIn, and we convert the podcast episode to an article, and you're free to comment and share. And please share our episodes with your friends, your families, your coworkers, your sisters who you feel need to hear this message, especially this message around forgiveness. So let's keep the conversation going and create the future that you deserve. I'm here to create the future that you deserve, not for us to live in the past, but to create the future that you deserve. So there's a cost to unresolved grievances. And there is a point when we have to know when to leave toxic workplaces. When forgiveness isn't enough, unresolved issues take a toll on us, especially as women of color. Chronic stress, disengagement, the lack of alignment with your values is a signal that it might be time to move on. It's a time to assess your boundaries and ask yourself this critical question. Is staying here holding me back from finding my possible? Is my inability to forgive them for all the egregious things they've done to me going to stop me from seeing what's possible for me here? Our next episode of What's Your Possible, we're going to talk about, is it time to go? That is our next episode. I think as we come out of the gate of 2025, it's essential that we address not down the road what we want, but addressing it now in rapid fire. So our next episode is it time to go? It's sort of a level set question. You know, the question really is, can I see my possibility here? And if I cannot see my possibility here, do I leave? And we will dive into, are you staying with employers out of fear because it's truly where you're meant to grow? Or are you staying there because you have some, innate loyalty to an organization that's not being loyal to you? So join us for the next episode of What's Your Possible. And as I said, please share this because we are tackling hard questions you face in your career. And so our next episode is it time to leave? So one of the main things that I'd like to ask you to do is to start practicing forgiveness. And to practice forgiveness, you focus on your growth, right? That's the first thing that you do. And there's some steps to practicing forgiveness. You focus on your growth. You reframe grievances as opportunities for personal and professional growth. You communicate your needs. You articulate what you need to move forward, whether it's an apology or an acknowledgement. You don't not use your voice out of fear. We are not going into 2025 in fear. So whether it's an apology or an acknowledgement that you need, say it. Say, I'm a little hurt that I didn't get the job, and I just want you to know that. Free yourself by saying it out loud. Don't harbor it and say, gosh, I think I can't say it. We also need to set boundaries to protect our emotional well-being by defining what we will and will not tolerate. And we have to know what we will not tolerate. We have to practice empathy. Just because it happened to you doesn't mean that it was always intentional. Understanding that your leaders and your organization is not perfect. You are living in an imperfect world with imperfect leaders who were probably never taught to say, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that to you, right? This is not what I meant. And they may cry when they hurt you and you confront them, but accept the apology. Don't say you're apologizing from a bad place. If someone says they're sorry, accept their apology. Practice empathy. Let your guard down. Stop reliving the past over and over and adding more stories to it and making it bigger and grandioser than it was before. Okay? What can you do as a woman to not allow toxicity to define your future? For women, in particular, you women, Black women, brown women, any woman, we face unique challenges in forgiving while navigating systemic inequities. Forgiveness doesn't mean tolerating harm. I want to say that again. It means freeing yourself from the weight of the past, of the issue, at the thing that happened. We use forgiveness as a stepping stone to advocate for ourselves, to set clear boundaries that prioritize our future. If you've done this to me, do I trust you and stay here? Or do I recognize that what you did is a wake up call for me to go? And I can forgive you for what you've done. Thank you for showing it to me right now, because now it's time I see clearly that this is not a place that I can be and live to my full potential. So, the one thing that I want to talk about before we wrap up this podcast episode is understanding when you work in an organization that doesn't have a culture of forgiveness. If you work in an organization that doesn't have forgiveness, that you need to understand right away. Let's face it, if I hate you and you hate me, there's no room for engagement, right? Period. Organizations might try to engage people, but if you're in an organization that doesn't have forgiveness, that doesn't practice forgiveness, then you really cannot grow there. Let me tell you how organizations who don't practice forgiveness operate. Let me give you this operation so you understand it. When an organization does not practice forgiveness, this is how they discuss you. Let's say Margaret is up for a promotion. Margaret's up for promotion. Fantastic. We're going to promote Margaret. Brilliant that we're going to promote Margaret. Fantastic. But the conversation is, Margaret is fabulous. She's a great person, right? She's a fabulous person, beautiful individual, great team player. But do you remember the time 5 years ago when she caused us to lose an account because she didn't know how to handle a certain part of the process and she dropped the ball? Yeah, but why is that important today? That was 5 years ago. That individual who says your name in that manner has never forgiven you for what happened 5 years ago. And they will continue to use that story from your past as a whipping stream to whip up other people against you. A culture of forgiveness in an organization is one where mistakes, conflicts, and setbacks are approached with empathy, accountability, and a commitment to grow rather than punishment and blame. It's an environment where individuals feel safe to acknowledge a mistake, address a grievance, and work collaboratively to rebuild trust, to apologize and know that it's not going to be held against you. When an organization tells a story about you and they bring up the very past, not the immediate past, but the very past, the very, very, very past, right? And they bring that back up as a way of framing you. It means that the organization does not have a culture of forgiveness. That is what it means. It means that the organization does not have a culture of forgiveness. Missteps should be seen as opportunities to learn and improve rather than a grounds for exclusion and judgment and continuous judgment. It's the kind of culture that doesn't foster psychological safety. And you might very well be someone who is having this same kind of conversation. You may very well be the one who is having the same kind of conversation. When you're saying the good things, you're giving the person the flowers, but at the same time, you're taking it back by saying something that happened to them 10 years ago, as if they could go back 10 years to fix whatever you've held on to from their past. And you're using that incident that can never be changed. And even though the individual has gone on to do great things, you can only see them through the mistake that they made in the past. So let's do a quick exercise on forgiveness at work. A quick exercise on forgiveness at work. To begin your journey of forgiveness, I want you to identify one workplace grievance that you're ready to release, something you're ready to let go. And it's a simple exercise to rebuild forgiveness at work. Write down the grievance you're ready to forgive. Sit at home with a glass of water, a glass of soda, a glass of anything, and write down what you're ready to forgive. Reflect on how forgiving could possibly impact your career and emotional well-being. If I let this go, can I move on? List one step you're willing to take to begin the forgiveness process. And I would love to hear what you do in this forgiveness process. So share your stories on social media, on our platform, on LinkedIn, on the Inclusion Learning Lab page on LinkedIn, on my page, Margaret Spence on LinkedIn, on the show notes around What's Your Possible. So here's a call to action as we wrap up this episode. Forgiveness asks for reflection and personal accountability and purposeful action. It asks you to build bridges with others to new opportunities, and most importantly, to build a bridge to and for yourself. In order to connect this to what's your possible, forgiveness allows you to imagine what's beyond the bridge you're building. It's not the destination. Forgiveness is not the destination. Forgiveness is not just a thing. Forgiveness clears the path so that you can see the future better. Ask yourself, how can forgiveness be the catalyst that reconnects me to my potential? I'd like you to ask yourself some what-if questions. What if forgiveness was the only thing standing between you and the next chapter of your career? What would it look like? What if the act of forgiving could unlock your potential that you didn't even know was there because you forgave the issue that happened in the past and now you're willing to move forward? And I want to leave you with two powerful questions. Who do you need to forgive to reclaim your power? And what will you gain by letting go of what's been holding you back? Remember, forgiveness is the bridge between where you are and where you want to go. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Forgiveness is where we unpack our possibilities, where we unpack our career future and beyond. So thank you for joining us for this episode. You can find me on LinkedIn under Margaret Spence, on Facebook as Margaret Spence, and on Instagram as Margaret Spence CEO. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, What's Your Possible, and for all the latest episodes on your favorite podcast app. We also want to ask you to explore the work that we're doing on the inclusionlearninglab.com and our courses website at courses.inclusionlearninglab.com. You can also go to Inclusion Learning Lab and click on courses, and it will take you to our course platform. So let's connect. Let's always remember that we are building our possibilities together. Don't forget to subscribe. Stay tuned for actionable insights on reskilling and reinventing your career. Share your stories of forgiveness at work on social media and tag us with What's Your Possible. Remember that the journey of forgiveness is identifying the grievances you're ready to release. Your future is calling you. Is forgiveness the answer? Never forget to ask, what's your possible? Until next time, thank you for joining us. Take care.